Welcome to the Executive Insights Podcast. I'm Clarke Rodgers from the Office of the CISO and AWS Security, and today I'm joined by George Gerchow, Chief Security Officer at Bedrock Data. George, welcome to the show.
Clarke, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Bedrock Data.
Yeah, so my name is George Gerchow, Chief Security Officer of Bedrock Data. We are a DSPM solution that's AI native, and we help people classify, do lineage and entitlement around data at scale.
So you've had quite a varied career in cybersecurity, VMware, Sumo Logic, MongoDB, and of course now at Bedrock Data. You've had the opportunity to be in leadership positions at all of those organizations. Can you share a little bit how leadership has changed in the security space over that time?
Oh, absolutely. It's such a fantastic question too, because when I first got started, it was mainly in IT. Security didn't really exist.
No, security was in the basement. Right.
For sure.
And they
right?
broke glass and said, go fix it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then kind of like when SOX came around, it just started sort of maturing into a thing. And I just started becoming more interested in cyber. And then we started getting leaders in cyber. And I felt like it was always sort of opposing to the business. Mm-hmm. The business was trying to move forward, trying to move quickly. And I think that now we're in an era where we have people who are much more approachable, which I think makes a huge difference, that really understand business needs and help drive it forward. It's not a question of saying no anymore. It's a how can we do this? How can we get it done?
For sure. So how have you evolved, right? Because at one point, you were the person in the basement fixing things, right? When things went wrong from a security perspective, but now you have a seat at the table with the other executives. You're reporting to the board on a regular basis. How did you either educate yourself or get comfortable in those kind of scenarios?
Oh gosh, lots of learning lessons there. You know, I think in the beginning, I hung on to the technical dragon way too much. And I never allowed my teams to like really grow and get a lot of the major things done because I was still so hands-on. And for those of you listening out there, I think that's one of the hardest things to do is when do you start letting go? But then have that technical breadth and depth in certain areas to where you still can have those business discussions. And then eventually I just started really looking at any organization I was with, like you mentioned VMware, and I was okay, where are the gaps? Where are the holes? How can security actually advance this company? And I think when my mentality changed more towards that, I got better as a leader. And then the people that I worked with, they got better as leaders as well too. And it just helped the organization overall.
Yeah, I think, when security leaders can frame themselves as business leaders with the security expertise, it helps bridge that gap and say, we want the business to succeed too. We just want to do it at a lower risk profile than maybe others, right?
Yeah, totally.
So you lead security at a company that uses AI for security. Can you explain a little bit some of the challenges that you either see internally with that or as you present your solutions to your customers?
I think it's more with the customers. Customers right now are so cautious, and rightfully so, about like how much learning we're doing in their environments. But if you think about the problem that we're trying to solve, it's a data problem. And a data problem, just to put it out there in very layman terms, as humans, we carry so much data.
For sure.
We never clear out our emails. We never clear out our pictures. We just hang on to data. We go from one job to another. Nobody brings their data from one job to the next, right? Their PowerPoint presentations or whatever it could be. And so that learning really matters, because if we're going to classify data, identify data, discover data, we need the help of something that can help us scale. So AI came at the right time for this kind of space to be able to do that. Now, from a customer perspective, they're looking at it going, what are they finding out about us?
Right.
Like what kind of like sensitive information is this company storing that could potentially leak? And I think it's a valid concern, but if you do it in the correct way, leverage metadata correctly, and then you can protect the customer while still providing a scalable solution. But that's really the biggest challenge is from the customer perspective. They're like, we don't want you learning in the background.
For sure. So when are your customers using your product, right? So when I speak to CISOs and they're talking about, this is a couple of years ago now, we're starting to experiment with AI. We want to first make sure, to your point, where is our data? What is our data? How is it classified? Is it encrypted appropriately, et cetera? Are people using your product at that sort of entry phase into AI, or during or at the end or with Agentic? Where's the sweet spot where you all fall into place?
So the sweet spot, thank you for saying that, because before I was gonna be like, it's all over the
Right.
place. I think the sweet spot for us is really companies who are AI advanced right now. We could be a good entry gateway for a lot of more conservative type verticals, but it's really the companies who are leaning into it that understand this data problem that we've been talking about, because ultimately, Clarke, that's what really matters the most, right? Like I've been through two major public security incidents over the last 3 years, one at Sumo Logic, one at MongoDB, and all we ultimately cared about is did sensitive data leave the environment or not? And so it's those forward-thinking companies that are leaning into AI that are our sweet spot.
Got it. So prior to being Bedrock Data AI, you were Bedrock Security. Why the name change?
It was about the ICP and the customer. Security is just a small portion of it. And that's where the pain was immediately in the beginning, in the inception of the company, was security leaders were worried about data leaving the environment, discovering sensitive data, labeling it, classifying it. But what we saw over time was CTO and architects are really the people that are the stewards of data. They're the ones that are building out in these new models. They're the ones that are doing large language model training and all these different things along with business owners. So we felt like by being just so security focused that we weren't helping the right people within organizations. So that's why the name change took place. And I think it was the right move to do.
It makes sense. No, that's absolutely fantastic. So you've had a very varied career and you have expertise in lots of different areas. I'd like to touch a little bit on the development aspect of it. So DevSecOps, you're well versed in. You stood up an organization within VMware to do that. How has that evolved in the world of AI? And what does it mean to either that developer, the individual developer who's building the next great function that they want to release for their company, or maybe even that security engineer who's using AI as well?
Yeah, let's start with the developer. Developers for me in the beginning of my career, you were talking about growth earlier, have always been kind of the most challenging thing in security, because you have to be able to sell your strategy to them and make them understand why it's so valuable to them, what they're doing, whatever the widget is they're working on. It cannot be a compliance-driven approach, or else it's going to drive them absolutely crazy, as you know. And so what's happened over time now, and especially with developers, is I try to figure out like what their processes are, how they're working, and then how I can best adapt my strategy to them instead of coming in with like a cookie cutter framework saying thou shall. And it's worked out really well, but I think DevSecOps slowed down, didn't it? It seemed like we were at the precipice of something. Like I think I did a talk on DevSecOps here at reInvent in 2018.
Right.
And it had all this momentum, but then I still feel like we were kind of siloed. Developers didn't really lean in as much. And as security people, we didn't explain it well enough as to what their job was going to be in minimizing that risk and how to move fast. With AI, we have another opportunity. It's an inflection point to say, hey, we want you to use this, but we want to put the right guardrails in place to where we can both move fast and enable the business to be able to deliver better products and really satisfy any customer needs out there.
So how does that work practically with the developers, right? So is it an AI assistant? Is it something that's built into the IDE that's making them better security developers at the end of the day? How does it all work?
Yeah, I think it's AI assistants, really.
Okay.
Like if you have an AI assistant that's constantly doing checks, and especially around security, and then it's almost like they have a partner or someone who's riding shotgun with them as they're developing code and as they're delivering these workloads.
A couple years ago when generative AI first came on the scene, it was the sort of chatbot, right? So let's put all our documentation and best practices in there. The developer could go to the chatbot and actually do it. Now all of that information is built into the IDE for the end of the day. Cool. So back to sort of leadership for a moment. How do you keep current with all the things that are out there in cybersecurity and business? I know you do faculty work at IONS. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so IONS has been just like a real gift to me and to the security community as a whole. And so, for those of you that don't know, it's Institute of Applied Network Security, located in Boston, but has coverage through the U.S. And as a faculty member of IONS, I get to talk to so many different customers at different verticals and understand their challenges, and what it is that they're actually trying to accomplish. And even though I advise them quite a bit and bring some of my expertise to them, I learned from them too. Like for example, like in 2015 when I was at Sumo Logic, I was like, in 2 years, everybody's going to be in the public cloud. Like there will be no more on-premise workloads. And although I love that idea still
Right.
today, a lot of people were slower to move, and that those things didn't materialize at that time like I thought they would. Now cloud is growing and growing and growing, but it was one example where by being part of IONS, I got to see what some of the different struggles were with people and what they were considering and how they were overcoming these challenges. Then I get to take it to other IONS customers as well too. So it's been a fantastic journey.
And I imagine there's opportunities there for leadership improvement that you can take back to your own organization as well.
Always, and because then I have data.
Yeah.
I can come back with data to my organization, to my executive team and board and say, this is what I'm seeing by these subset of customers. It just makes sense for us to start behaving this way.
Got it. So back to AI. Responsible AI, of course, is all over the news and how organizations should think about it. What does responsible AI mean to you, and how do you articulate it to both your customers and then internally at Bedrock Data?
I think it all comes down to transparency. It's I always feel like if we're pretty upfront to how we're learning, how we're using AI, what some of our large language models are, how we're building agentic AI, for example, and just being as transparent as we possibly can with the community, it's just going to make us better. It's an ethical thing at this point. I'll give you a story that was kind of weird. Was a few weeks ago, speaking of IONS, I was in New York and I was talking to a certain vendor that had switched their large language model over to DeepSeek and didn't tell their customers. And I was like, wow, that just seems like something that people should have in their contracts, or as a vendor, you should be a little bit more transparent about it. Now, in all fairness to the vendor, they hadn't really thought about it that way because it was more of a development type startup. And so I think by being transparent is how we're really going to reach ethical and responsible AI.
Is there a checklist you use with your customers, for example, like what kind of outputs are okay, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you got to stick with certain frameworks as well, too. Like if you think about the NIST framework around AI, ISO, which is a little bit more, adopted around the world, and the EU has it as well, too. But I think there's always like this solid 5 to 10 questions that you should ask and get away from the traditional security questionnaires. Like, my goodness, don't even get me started on that. Like, we've been doing those things for how long now, right, and expecting different results. And so it's always about a good 5 to 10 questions that you should ask.
Could you share a couple of those with us?
Yep. Yeah. The first one for sure is, what large language models are you using? Right. How are you training them? The other one that's really interesting is, what kind of data are you really taking back? So if you are like an AI native company like us, are you bringing back sensitive data, or is it just metadata? Like, what is the actual role that you have? Is it a read-only type role, or is it full-blown access rights? And then, I think those are probably the 2 most important ones that you can ask.
For sure. And then on top of that, or I guess alongside that, the governance models that customers should be thinking about as far as making sure that either the AI that they're building, their AI that they're using is sort of up to snuff?
Yeah, for sure. And like we were talking earlier about a good common friend of ours that's at CSA, and
right,
now they're looking at Maestro and some other things that look at layer 7 around AI. I think those are really good models to have in place.
Back to people. So you've built a lot of security teams over the years. What are some of the best practices that you've developed, learned, implemented, et cetera, to really develop sort of high-performing security teams? You talked earlier about aligning security outcomes with business outcomes, so I imagine there's a part of it. But a lot of times, the security professionals, are hardcore security, tech-focused individuals, and you have to mold them, right?
Yeah, it's a mix. It depends on the stage of the company. So like at Sumo Logic and then now at Bedrock Data, I'm kind of starting from scratch. And so I usually lean into the developers more. Like I love having developers that may not know much about cyber and putting them in.
So these are not part of the security organization.
Exactly.
Okay. Right.
And I usually pluck them directly from the development team in the organization that I'm in.
Okay.
And then use a lot of their automation skills, a lot of their coding capability, a lot of their problem solving skills while teaching them cyber. And I think that that's the beginning of the nucleus of a really good team, because you automate everything you possibly can first. But then eventually you need to augment those folks with people who have like amazing situational awareness and business aptitude. I like leaning in a lot into veterans. I'm a veteran myself, and getting those folks on board. Yeah, well, thank you for your service.
Right back at you.
But like, I think that blend of the two becomes powerful as you start growing and really building a high performing security team.
Got it. And then if we go a little bit deeper on the sort of pure security side, maybe it's somebody's going into your operations center or security engineering, what makes for a good hire?
I think it's someone who just has this attitude of wanting to help. You got to be approachable, because if you're not in an environment where people are self-reporting, you're going to be investigating all day on things that happened 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And so I always try to look for people that are really open-minded, non-judgmental, and are very, very approachable, which is hard because, we're both introverts. We talked about that a little bit. Like, I get passionate about things, and people, I think, misunderstand that for being extroverted. But I grew up in a SOC,
right,
and we didn't talk to people. And so having those folks like work through a process to where they can actually communicate, but more importantly, listen, really sets them up well for the future and sets up the organization for success.
And how about sort of diversity of backgrounds? I think if you pick somebody off the street and you say, tell me what a security expert looks like, it's going to be, somebody with blue hair and a hoodie and tattoos and, high on Red Bull, right? and just coding away in the dark somewhere. You need some of those people.
For sure.
But what are some of the traits of the rest of your security team that you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm really looking for people who like understand problems, like hard problems, and really have a willingness to want to solve them,
right,
and do the things that other people don't want to do, like sifting through logs,
for sure,
or like going through alerts and prioritizing those alerts. A lot of it comes down to attitude, and that's why I love the prior military aspect. Like earlier, we were talking about the gentleman that replaced me at Sumo, Roland Palmer. He was a U.S. veteran, a Marine for a long time. And this is a guy that parachuted into Japan and operationalized a nuclear spill and saved people's lives. You put him in a cybersecurity incident or environment, he's just going to excel.
In his environment, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the communication, the processes, the playbooks that he's going to run. And so like having that kind of diversity, I think is huge. And the last thing I'll say about it too, and this is around the leadership side, is vulnerability matters. Like when I make a mistake, I am so open to throwing myself under the bus, you know? And I think when people see you do that and be vulnerable, people want to rally around you and help, and especially your peers on executive teams.
For sure. Over the last couple of years with generative AI and more recently Agentic AI, plenty of stories in the news about how some of the threat actors are using it. Not so much in the news about how the defenders are using it. So this is a two-parter for you. One, what are you seeing the threat actors using, or some of their techniques leveraging AI? And then what are some of the leading security teams doing using agentic AI or generative AI to sort of combat this?
Yeah, so great question. I'm glad you broke it down into two parts so I could remember it. So, I mean, ransomware as a service is here, and we're starting to see a lot of these organizations come together and work together and communicate.
The criminal organizations, yes.
For sure. Like they've got like a fabric that they're using out there. But I think that what they're doing right now is they're leveraging AI bots to gain entry somewhere. And they actually can't keep up with how much entry these AI bots are getting. I believe that the public security incident that we went through at Sumo Logic, which again, it's all out there. You can Google it, or whatever you need to do to look at it. I think that it was an AI bot. And the reason why is because the threat actor made their way in and did absolutely nothing. So it was either like a script kiddie that didn't know what to do past it, but I believe it was an AI bot. And so they're able to scale to no end. But then who really takes the helm when you've actually done something, and how do you get alerted on that?
Right.
So, but I think this problem is going to get worse because they're going to get smarter, and then
Well, it's lowering the barrier to entry, right?
For
To your point,
sure.
Script Kiddie.
Yeah.
If you can figure out how to log on and get the code and start executing,
Yeah.
you're a cyber criminal.
You're a cyber criminal
Right.
all of a sudden overnight. But what I love is the other side, is like what we're starting to do now. So you and I have already talked a few times about the SOC. Like now that I can start triaging alerts and starting to understand data context in alerts, and then be able to really get after the problem, leveraging AI, I think is massive. We're seeing a lot of the bug bounty space leveraging AI. To be able to find vulnerabilities faster and kind of take that out of humans' hands. And so I think that this is the way we're going to scale. For years, we've been saying there's 500,000 security jobs open and we can't fill them. Well, guess what? We're filling them, and then we're up-leveling the people that we have that are really good to start focusing on more of a strategic initiative around security. It's super exciting.
I think it's exciting as well. And to see some of the agentic possibilities to, again, support the humans in the SOC and other places is fantastic. So you spend a lot of time advising your security at Bedrock Data itself. What do you see the next couple of years looking like? What is your average sort of Fortune 1000 company looking out for from being able to use these tools to protect their environments?
Yeah, I think most of them right now, like they're going to invest more and more in agentic AI, which they should, to really start protecting the environment, getting it going. But like my advice to a lot of them is to start embracing it more and more. Like, yes, we should have AI governance committees and all these types of things together, but we're at the precipice of this right now. Like, I think that we're still so at the beginning of all of this that ride with it, embrace it, and especially CISOs. Like it's going to help advance the organization. It's going to make us all better in a lot of ways, as long as we're ethical and responsible about it. But I think that that's really where they should lean in. And then obviously data protection.
Yes.
Like one thing we got away from, Clarke, and I couldn't wait to bring it up. I'm so glad I remembered it, is defense in depth.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. And we went to zero trust so fast, which I believe in zero trust. But outside of that perimeter, we have to get back to defense in depth and putting layers on. There is no silver bullet. And I think we forgot about data over time. It was the perimeter and it was the endpoint and the user. What about the data?
Well, I think I had several conversations around this. No matter how advanced these tools get, you still need to do the basics well.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day.
For sure.
Final question for you. When I was prepping for this interview, I was going through your resume and found that you are a licensed financial planner. Please explain how that fits into the entire cyber world.
Okay. So this is actually very important. So thank you for asking. I've been very fortunate, professionally in my life. And, when Sumo Logic went public, and I was with a software company that was bought twice, I've exited like 5 times. I started noticing that financial advisors didn't really understand what we do, how the software world works, and I was given a lot of bad advice. And so I decided to take matters in my own hands, go out and become licensed myself, build my portfolio, and then start helping other people in our industry. So I actually carry clients.
That is fantastic. I just don't know. I need to look at your calendar to see how you operate your full day, but awesome stuff. George, thank you so much for joining me today. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Clarke, I really appreciate being here. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.